the posterior horizontal ramus, which is a fold of tissue here, right? There's much more connective tissue connecting the front of the brain with the back of the brain with the left hemisphere, whereas the right hemisphere is much more connected to internal milieu. The reverse is never the case. We've never seen anatomically anybody structured differently. We all have the same structure, and sometimes we use this structure a little differently, that's all. If you ever get a person into an integrated state, then you'll notice that all of these accessing cues and everything are the same. When a person's going down to the bottom left-hand side and you're seeing the foot move, the bottom left-hand foot move, or the hand moving down there, fidgeting or something like that, right? Or the eyes move down to the bottom left quadrant, this person is actually accessing neuroanatomy, which is involving internal dialogue, regardless of the person being right-handed or left-handed.
So the person actually had a mirror body, where the heart was actually on the right side, the liver was on the left side. Then if they were left-handed, they would actually be demonstrating what a right-handed person would.
It's quite possible, for this to affect the process of things upstairs. But I'm wondering, I guess it's possible for someone to be swapped around like this.
Well, there is.
And I have met one person who said that their heart was more over on their right side.
People whose hearts are more in the middle.
Well, Tim, the guy in that one Ashtanga Yoga, that guy Tim, he's been what do they call it, sonogram and stuff.
Yes.
His liver is definitely on the left, his heart's definitely on the right.
Definitely?
Yeah, he's unusual, and so once they found him.
Yeah, so it's possible that for sure always there's going to be some exception somewhere, possibly,
So what I'm saying is,
yes,
if in fact he is left-handed, then he is actually demonstrating that he's using, in my left brain, more right-handed. If he's left-handed, it's actually his right brain, which is doing the function of my left brain.
Quite possibly. So always it's possible for exception to be there, and we're always mostly sorting for what it is that's general and how this information can be used, amongst us, which, all of us are this way. However, we should allow there to be the exception for sure, because we're not knowing all things, necessarily.
David, in our study group, we looked at this diagram and we wondered whether this right brain holistic should be on this side and left brain analytical should be on that side. We couldn't understand the diagram just because of these. Are these maybe reversed by mistake, or could you explain how that is?
Yes, it's
reversed.
It's as you look at the person.
All of this is right brain function, right? The construct, the auditory.
Yes, okay. The one thing that you can say about this is that visual construct because it's involving internal milieu, right? And even though it is involving a configuration of the left hemisphere, it's more involved in internal milieu somewhat, whereas the visual system may be being involved a little bit more in analytical sense as a result of numbers and lettering. However, mostly better off when you're looking at that diagram in the technician's manual on page 59, eye scanning patterns, that the top pattern where you're seeing a person looking up to the right with their eyes, this person is in visual construct, and it's involving the left hemisphere more.
It is, okay.
Yes, that's
we thought maybe those were reversed.
yes, right. Should pay attention to that. There's a couple of other things that are happening in here that also need to be fixed up.
So what would we? So what is that?
Just take out right brain holistic and left brain analytical.
That's what we everybody was trying to figure that out, and
Just take out right brain holistic.
Yeah, just cross out that. Okay. Just so that the tape is rolling here, and what other questions do we have now? So because we want to kind of finish up soon here. Who else has something that they would like to say? Hopefully everybody has had the opportunity to say something for the group. Okay, who's next?
Last month we talked about submodalities and all the little aspects of each submodality. I was wondering, in the context of using this, how is that valuable?
Okay, because if someone's talking about the distance between something, then you are going to know that distance is a submodality basically of the visual system, right? Because distance, mostly the way that we tell distance is actually through our visual system. Height is a submodality of the visual system. Mostly we're telling height through the visual system. Just simply by somebody mentioning the word height, you'll know that actually they are employing their visual system. Or if somebody is talking about a softness with which the way they go about something, that you'll know that softness is relating to is a submodality of the tactile sense. So if somebody wants to turn the volume up, okay, so then up is a vestibular word, whereas volume is an auditory word. So the submodalities enable us to give distinction, and that this distinction in fact is what it is that enables us to make up our perception. So it's important in understanding the distinction as much as you have the ability to help others and to help create strategies that work fitting in a submodality. If you notice that there was a little roughness happening, it'd be a good idea then to bring in that word. I think that, feel like that as the flow's occurring, that there's a sense of smoothness through the action. Wires that tactile component in as well.
If you're tracking a subject or a person and you're trying to learn which modality they really utilize primarily, if you can identify those submodalities, it's much easier.
Well, I know that you're using very much visual sense, right? You looked up into visual memory, eyebrows were raised quite a bit, so we know very much. Dave, the more that we will take Dave into auditory, to what we're talking and how it's sounding and how you're feeling, I'll bet that even these words, actually you can feel altered state with these words somewhat, because the primary representational system is visual.
I started to use see instead of learn, and I called myself and said learn instead of see.
Yes, so learn is much more generic. Okay. All right, now, a couple of people haven't said anything, so let's hear something from you. Get the book and have a quick look, or is there something that you would like to share about, something that's value to you? So I might ask you a question then. All right, Libby, in playing drums, what would be a visual beat in compared to a kinesthetic beat?
Something that someone is showing you compared to something that I...
Okay, if you were doing just a drum beat, what would a drum beat be that was visual?
I don't understand what you're...
The drum beat that would be more visual would be faster. And the one thing that you can hear that's louder in there is kinesthetic, and the half one in between is auditory. The faster the beat, the quicker the pace, the lighter the beat, the more visual it is. The slower the beat, the more drawn out space between the beat, the harder the beat, the more kinesthetic. And the beat that's in between is more auditory. So you're taking a person through this full range as a result of bringing those pieces in. How you create trance. You create trance by, the beat being starting to slow down a little over time and more drawn out pieces in it. If you're having a doon-back drum, you can even be bringing in the component of the sound actually going in, by bringing your hand in the back into the drum. Or when I finish sometimes, I'm actually finishing, like if people are going into trance, I finish with the beat going in. And if we're just coming to culmination or something, I'll finish with maybe 3 beats, out, with my hand coming out of the doon-back. Okay. Alright, I'm going to ask you a question here coming up, Penny. And Nancy, who else? And Nancy, you're the only other person, the three of you.
Can I sit in the corner over there? Snack down if you want.
Over to internal dialogue.
Alright, okay, I'm going to ask Penny something.
Alright, okay.
What is it? What creates congruency? What is congruency? When somebody's congruent, when you're recognizing that their actions and what they're saying is congruent, how do you know that they're congruent? As opposed to dissociated. I know that each of us know this. We have this feeling. We can just tell straight away, right, whether someone's congruent or somebody's dissociated. How cognitively now would you explain what it is that you would be seeing or hearing, or what your experience would be that would be creating congruency? Congruency happens when things are parallel. In other words, what happened yesterday supports today, or what happened just a few moments ago supporting this moment. And now this moment was still not yet congruent until the moment after also is supporting this moment. Then this moment is congruent. So, and people in the work environment out there, and especially the people that you are working with, that you have some 40 people that's responsible for in their behaviour. Are you noticing in fact that what the person is languaging to you has what it is that they said before supported this moment, and has what they're saying afterward supporting this moment? Then this moment is congruent. So that you are making sure in fact that that's occurring, because sometimes people are saying stuff that doesn't support, that they just put something right here, and what they said just before doesn't support it. Or then they'll say something and then they go on to something else that's the opposite of something that they said, and this is truly the person's, there is less congruency there. So congruency is the state of parallelness that's running, and are the output channels supporting each other. In other words, if you were to ask me to think of, would you like going swimming, David? Me seeing myself in the water possibly would be a congruent response. Then constructing seeing myself in the water would be a congruent response. Now, there's three types of responses. There's a congruent response, there's a response which is a meta response. In other words, there's a response about the response, rather than exiting from that submodality into another submodality. If a person's staying in the same submodality, then that's much more of a meta response occurring. A person goes over something and then goes over it again and then goes over it again. This always comes from dissociation. And the more abstract the behaviour becomes, the more the person goes over it, the more abstract the behaviour generally becomes. So congruency is when you simply put something that can stand by itself, doesn't have to have run on after it. Sometimes you are saying something again though, for people to get it.
What's an example of the...
So there's three types. We've got a congruent response, we've got a meta response, and we've got an incongruent response. Like polarization. A response that's involving polarization.
Is an incongruent response?
Quite possibly it's an incongruent response, yes.
Could you have a Milton response too?
Pardon?
Could there be a Milton response?
Could you have a Milton response?
Yeah.
You could have a Milton response by talking a little bit with fluff.
Right.
Yes, by nominalizing, by winging it with fluff.
Right.
Yes.
What is an example of the behavior becoming more abstract as you hear someone going over and over the same point?
Okay, well, whenever this is occurring, it's generally occurring because the person thinks that what they've said is not enough, that they need to reinforce it again and again and again, right? And that we're understanding this. When the person's doing this again and again and again, we're realising there's something that's a little more dissociated, more abstract actually. So we should become good at simply putting something, and that's it. So, and it's a good idea for training animals this way and everything, that you say it once. If you say, come on over here, come on over here, come on over here, and then you're just like doing this over and over again. Finally, you've got to do it about 10 times, and then finally the animal comes over to you. Should say this once and get the animal used to hearing what you want. You know, otherwise the animal gets used to this dissociated kind of way of calling the animal to you, you know. But anyway, whatever the animal's got used to, then you've got to, you've got to go with that kind of. Okay. Nancy.
Yeah.
Do you have anything that you're interested in so far, or that you think is excellent? Something that you heard, or something that you would like to say?
I've heard a lot of things here that are really excellent. A lot of responses that what we were doing yesterday I thought was very helpful to people, especially to me.
What specifically? Now I'm using the meta model. What specifically? Actually, it's a good idea as we're talking to be specific and say the exercise that we did, or
well, really,
and
the
what
exercise on anger,
on anchoring.
Angering people.
Right. Anchoring.
Anger. Then you
Excuse me. The flexibility drill. Okay.
Well, I don't know what you call it.
Yes, flexibility drill.
I thought that to see myself try calming down instead of getting angry at somebody
is
a lot different.
So do you think somebody could come over and really scream something at you, and
right, and
it could be just like water off a duck's back?
That's something new. I felt a lot of differences inside of me. I don't know about other people.
Okay, so actually the whole point is to do with us being able to gain flexibility, truly being very flexible, and that element in any system that has the greatest flexibility is always the controlling element in that system.
Always at that.
Yes.
Okay, break the rules.
I've never seen the reverse to be the case ever.
Could be especially helpful in New York.
In any system at all, chemical, electrical, government, right, family. All right, let's take us back for
Lunch.
I want to say that there's two ladies here that have just driven in from Lafayette that heard about 4WAM. So I invited them to sit on the deck and walk around, and we're going to take a break, and that you'd be available for them to they want to find out what we're doing here.
So here's what I thought, and maybe John suggested possibly that we have lunch. I thought that we would have like a 5-minute break, coffee break or something, and then we could go out. And could we start some of the elements, John? Would that make sense? And then have lunch at 1:30 in an hour.
We assemble on the course, it'd be 1. It would take us 2 hours, and the series to be 3. For me, it makes more sense to have a lunch quickly and
Early and late lunch.
Okay, let's.
I can get it ready, but it's not right now.
what would it take to?
To get it ready?
Yeah.
Probably 25.
Okay, so let's all go out to the hickory jump. Let's all go out to the hickory jump. Let's have a break. Let's take a 5-minute break, have coffee, and then let's all go out to the hickory jump, and then we'll have lunch, and then we'll go out in the elements.
I guess we should start it now.
Okay, so it's Monday morning. All right.
I've got a question. I wish you'd say some more about dissociation and association. I get a bit confused about, and I'm attaching some judgments to it.
Yes,
like
okay.
dissociation is bad and association is good, and
Okay. All right. So
and I also know that there are times when one is appropriate, one is inappropriate, or vice versa, or useful or less useful.
yes. Okay. So when you're associated. Finds it. Look away, actually, to come back to something. The looking away is helping the brain dissociate, to go from one thing to the next. So dissociation isn't necessarily, it's not either good or bad. It would depend on the context, whether it was more appropriate for someone to be associating or appropriate for someone to dissociate. Is that clear that up?
Yeah,
Richard?
so a person who's looking away when they're speaking with you, they're dissociating from what?
Going from one thing to the next. When you go from one thing to the next, when you leave something, something that you're using dissociation. You are using that.
And it's just a strategy they have for dissociating, going to the next. Oh.
Yes, like for instance a dog or the cat out here, got chased by the dogs, right? When it came into the bathroom here, to dissociate from that experience, it went. It shook itself, and like that, okay, and that kind of changed the program upstairs. Okay, so now the pupil of the eye is acting like a gate, enabling us either to be able to draw internal images from inside and so that our behaviour is coming from things that are inside. If the pupil of the eye has the ability to dilate a little, okay, this enables a person to be able to access internal information. But if the pupil is held to the external world, then a person might not be quite able to access internal information. Like the child at school who, doing an exam, really glued to the external world, because this is an exam or something, really glued to the external world, the kid might not quite be able to access internal information, like internal visualization. That would be important to run a check on words and things, that you'd written, or to think about where you would be going in something, actually. So mostly that's the reason why people look away. If you were talking with them and you notice that they look away, or they have to look away, then that's an indication actually that the person's needing that movement to dissociate. Okay.
Was I disassociating initially on the rope source, on the high elements, when I was looking away from the ground? I was really looking at what I was doing.
Okay, so when you were looking away from the ground, you were dissociating from the ground. However, when you were looking toward, you were associated. Whenever you hear these words, you can know actually what they are meaning. Because away from and without, is dissociation, and toward and within is association. So when would this be this is more dissociated, isn't it? Posture, right? Really is, because my centre of gravity is outside and away from my base of support. But the more that my centre of gravity comes inside my base of support, the more that I'm likely to be in an associated state. Okay. We're going to be talking a little bit about dissociation actually today, the usefulness of this as a technique, working with someone or working with self. Okay, good question. Somebody else?
Questions? It's a broad range. I wanted to talk about tracking, and I wanted to talk specifically about how to track. I started to tracking the people that we're tracking.
Yes.
They're not doing well. And specifically, I'd like to ask today about hand calibration.
Okay.
We call it
hand calibration. Yes. Okay. All right.
I read the word.
Yes. Okay. Let's just go over hand calibration so you'll know it positively. The one thing is, just before we do that, right, with the question you asked about tracking, you're going to be looking and seeing what this person's excellence is. And it's possible there's something that, the way that you can use metaphor to spin something for the person.
To do what?
To spin something for the person, actually. So, for instance, I might give this person a power animal, actually. Give this person a power animal. I might, the energy of this animal might be something that I could bestow this person with, by reinforcing those things in the person that's to do with this. The ability to soar, or the ability to sparse self, to conserve energy. The ability to, the ability to store food for later on. I mean, you could talk about an animal, and actually there's metaphor in that's for the person. But anyway, the one thing is that you're tracking this person's excellence, and mostly to do it intuitively and to do it with a little art,
If I were a practitioner and I were sitting down with a client, then I'd probably, we're just starting, I'd probably go through here and do these exercises and have it be.
You would want to.
And I lay down and I remember, then I'm not having much of a strategy for doing it.
Okay, so you'll remember this person and how they went through the ropes course. You'll remember what sequence this person went in when they went over the wall. You'll remember how this person jumped maybe out here. Maybe you even were watching their eyes. I was watching everybody, everybody made a decision to jump. I was watching, how this person has shown up here, what kinds of things have interested this person, what is happening for this person in their life. How does this person walk around the room? What is this person wanting? What was their outcome actually here? And what is excellent about this person? And what are they wanting to achieve in life? What do they have as an outcome in life? And so then you can weave anything. Jenny's quite masterful in the way that she does her presentation, like her gifting. She'll bring a ladder in, a mop and a bucket. She'll have the person up on the ladder, and she'll be just like, she'll have this person put something on. I mean, it's very funny. And actually, there's usually something, with everything, in fact. This person really loved to get high, this last person, right, that Jenny did. So, she had this person, climb up a ladder, right, so it'd be more of a high place. And I mean, a couple of levels from the surface, there were some things that Jenny was playing to this person, and we were all laughing. It was kind of just catching, right? So you can...
On top of the ladder, because this person always talked about they needed a charge.
I mean, she's really... she might blindfold somebody, right? Because actually she might not say this, of course, but let's just say the person might not have been using visual system, but mostly using auditory and kinesthetic. And so Jenny frames something, in the skit, that all of a sudden the blindfold is taken off. Now this person can see. And, so she just said that. And kind of at a few levels back it made sense for the person. It was a reminder of something, in fact, that that was being reinforced about their current present condition. So, if it was someone, if you notice that the person was feeling, okay, so now I use the word noticed and feeling. Okay, so quite possibly this person is visual kinesthetic, might be looping over the auditory sense. So then it's something that you could do phonologically. Now you're going to be here, right, in this place, and then you're talking about something, and then you're going to feel the tone. Okay, so now tone, it can also be muscular, and it can also be auditory, and here can be kinesthetic, right, as far as a place, and also auditory. So she's spinning things like this, not so much making the person conscious of something. It could be just a skit about Alice in Wonderland, or something. Okay.
They're fun too, if you look at it, it's just to have like fun with that, 5-10 minutes. Is that the gifting? It's not like a little ceremony.
So one day this person really was, had a kind of phobia for, going to the dentist, right? And anyway, so she called up and said that she wanted to be cured of this phobia of going to the dentist. And that, if she could be cured, then we would have the press and everything there. Because she hadn't been able to go to the dentist or anything. And so we dressed up in costumes, right? And I had a workman's helmet on, right? For drilling and stuff, And we really dressed up incredibly. And a crystal. And so we gave her a crystal to hold in her hand and everything. And the main thing was totally took it out of the realm of actually, what had been the past actually. So we used a bit of a technique of distraction and playfulness, right? To move them more into whole brain functioning actually. So you can be very creative, very creative. You can give something that then will remind the person of something. Whenever they see this thing, it will remind them of some things, in fact, that you shared. Okay? A fellow recently gave Annie a beautiful lapis stone. And he had a beautiful piece of lapis in his ring. And this piece of lapis that he had was beautiful. And so when he was talking to Annie, he just had his hand up here. And Annie was seeing this beautiful lapis, not thinking anything, all right? But then, at the end, he pulled out a piece of lapis and gave it to Annie, right? And I saw what he was doing, okay? But for everybody else, possibly it was kind of a little bit below consciousness. But he was actually marking out the things that he was saying with this piece of lapis in his ring, which happened to be exactly the same, that he had in his pocket at the very end. Of course, he never said, well, I'm marking this out, for you, and good idea for it to be subtle, right? Better off being a little subtle, so that it's not catching the person's conscious mind, actually. I think the best kind of change work happens this way, because it bypasses conscious objection completely and the change occurs. Okay.
Kind of a statement, maybe. I worked on a fellow last time I was here, and he's done some NLPs and a bunch of different things. And when he came back this time, I said, well, how did the treatment affect you? He said, well, I used to have this picture that I would go to, one of the stuck states. He said, and after the treatment, the picture was gone. He goes, boy, these needles are really powerful. And I thought that was really wonderful. That somehow, because I always talk with people, and there was a point to the talk, and he associated the change state with the needles. I thought that was really a great metaphor.
Yes, that's excellent. I mean, it's very interesting, this point that Dad raises. It's very interesting because it's even funny. The person's left brain sometimes will just run rings all over the place to rationalise something that's taken place when it hasn't got any idea at all. And it's so far away, truly. But however, the left brain it'll make up a story about it, and for the person, it's totally rational, and it's actually what it was that occurred. And what we know today from split brain studies is that the left brain might not have the information at all, but it'll think it has, and it'll rationalise stuff, right? When really, truly, the right brain is understanding all. If let's say that something was flashed over here, and it really went to the right hemisphere. However, we're asking the person to now speak about what it was or indicate something, with their left hand, which is much more connected to the right hand, much more connected to the left hemisphere. The person may just do something with their left hand, right? And absolutely believing solidly, yes, that's what occurred, and even have a little rationalisation for what occurred, and it might not at all be what occurred.
Right. Well, I remember that treatment. People have pictures over here. Oh, there's a picture over here, he said.
Quite possibly Ned did something. This person was picturing something, and Ned may have said something, well, it would be a good idea if you moved to, or he just said, well, what happened so-and-so when you were at, and this was a resource state, and the person just went from this stuck state picture to a resource picture, and that the resource picture was powerful enough, and the resource state that Ned accessed with this person, with the treatment, was powerful enough that it totally just collapsed the stuck state into it. That's more than likely what happened.
Right, and he's very much left-brained and likes to be able to figure things out. And
so it's,
the metaphor in Chinese medicine is that energy slows down or stops in certain areas. And so that's what I talked to him about, was the energy moving through. Now that these needles had been in there, the energy could move much clearer and much simpler.
right.
And got the idea of energy movement
Yes.
up and down, around and through. And I think that's what happened to his picture, is that he allowed it to move on through.
So in the same situation, I have another example. A woman came to me and she needed to have a CAT scan done. And she was phobic about kind of getting inside that revolving thing, right? And she really was having great difficulty. And even though the medical people had this massive device, right, to kind of find out what was going wrong with her, there's no way they could use it on her because she was kind of phobic. And so when she came to me, I said to her, well, what is it that's happened the last time, more or less, that this occurred? And she told me, more or less what she told me was that this thing was like right here, like, real close to her, and she felt like, oh God, I'm inside something. And then her car was parked out on the street, right out in New York, and she's inside, and I said to her, can you see your car through these walls now, out on the street? And she went, her conscious mind just went straight through the walls and everything, just out, and she could see her car. And actually what she did then in the CAT scan was use a technique a little like that. So go from this spot of seeing this thing evolving around her, real close to her, to be able to see out completely into the park, and to see all the way down the street where her car was parked. Okay. So actually, if the person can, like one day I work with someone who's a manager of some banks in Japan, and this person was really very overweight. And I asked her, well, what do you do with stuff that you need to deal with? And this person said, I really put it in a lead box. I put it in a lead box and I stuff it in there, and it's just like it's unable to be penetrated. And so anyway, in the treatment, more or less, he had the ability truly to just see something just permeate through him and just like leave, through his skin, just like and out, rather than this storage of stuff actually, which was part of the psych condition that led to him, being incrementally storing food. And he lost quite a bit of weight after the session. That was one thing that I did. I did other things too, but he really lost quite a bit of weight, went back to his ideal self. Okay, so actually it could be also something that you read that you would enjoy going over or acknowledging here.
Did you want to get into the hand?
Oh yes, the hand thing too. Okay.
I know the words that are in the book, but I thought you could give them more.
Yes, okay. So first thing you want to know is that my left hand is connected to my intuitive mind, okay, and that my left hemisphere, my right hemisphere, all right, my left hand is connected to my right hemisphere. Right hemisphere is much more connected to internal milieu. So the left hand also is involved in internal milieu. Left hand is also involved in introspection, and also inhibition, and also aversion, and also visual spatial function. Okay, left hand is involved in. Okay, so you could say that the left hand is introspective hand. The right hand is expressive, external orientated because the left hemisphere is involved in connecting us with the external milieu by virtue of language exchange between ourselves, and also by virtue of brain function in kinesthetic motor sequencing, which this hemisphere is involved in. So this hand is my expressive hand. My right hand is my expressive hand. My left hand is my introspective hand. Okay. So now let's talk about the right hand, expressive hand. The thumb on both hands. Okay. The thumb is involved in my ability to be able to contain, my ability to be able to hold things. So if you see somebody, and they're walking around with their fingers wrapped over their thumb, okay, so that their thumb is inside their hand more or less with their fingers wrapped on the outside, this is kind of a regression. And actually it changes the state of consciousness upstairs here. And the minute that the hand comes out, it changes the state of consciousness upstairs here.
What about just closed like this?
Just closed like that, I mean, of course that's, the thumb more or less is the person's feeling that they have the ability to contain something.
I think I do that a lot.
Yeah. Anyway, the major thing is that our thumbs occupy vast areas of cortex. And of course, reflex back through to the area of the brain that's controlling them. And reflex back through areas of the brain that are approximately associated in the brain as well. So the thumb, when you were very small, all of a sudden your hand reached out and kind of grabbed something, and you realised that your hand could hold things. And then later on, when your eyesight started to come in, you realised that your hand could and your arm could reach out, grab things and bring things to you. The thumb very much is involved in containing my ability to hold, my ability to use things. Our thumb has enabled us to use tools. So it's taught us and is a reminder of these things. So for those of you who caught the bar with your thumb over the top of the bar yesterday, when you leapt from the hickory jump out, to the bar, some people had their thumbs over on top, caught the bar like this. There was a piece inside the person still yet when they were jumping that was to do with a sense of inability to be able to do the task. And so consequently then it led the person more to be having their thumb on top of the bar rather than underneath. So that's a little bit of a regressed pattern that was occurring. Okay, so the thumb very much has taught us to contain and hold things. So if you saw somebody holding, their left hand, their left thumb, all right, you would know that the person's expression, their ability to express and to construct, is drawing information from what it is that their unconscious mind is offering as far as what they can contain, actually what they can do, what they can hold on to. Because the right hand is holding the left thumb. Okay, so the thumbs are involved in containing, and the right hand is our expressive hand, the left hand is our introspective hand. So now the forefinger is very much involved in direction and planning, and the way that the motor homonucleus is set up, the forefinger is a little bit more closely associated with the frontal cortex than the other fingers in relation to the other fingers. And so as a result of that, it's more involved in direction and planning. You'll notice that this finger often comes out, in fact, when somebody's directing or somebody's planning involving that. Okay. Let's go to the ring finger now, and because the middle finger is in between